Hey, welcome back. I'm Gavin, if we've never met, and I help growth minded pastors maximize their mission by adding more intention to their leadership. And that's what this conversation, I hope, will help you do today. What I want to talk about is something most leadership content tends to gloss over. And I think the reason is I think the reason it gets glossed over is because it's kind of uncomfortable to talk about, if we're honest. You'll find out why in a minute. And because the damage it causes doesn't show up in the way that you'd expect it to. So it's uncomfortable and it's just easy to miss. So here it is, okay? Every time, this is the part. Ready? Every time you make a change, you pay a cost. And it's not a budget cost, it's a trust cost. And most pastors are running in a trust deficit that they just cannot see. For this conversation, let's call it the trust tax. I love that, the trust tax. And I want to kind of walk you through what this trust tax is, how it works, and what to do about it before it costs you more than it maybe already has. Here's how the trust tax usually presents itself. You noticed an initiative is gaining less traction than you expected, or a program isn't doing as well. Communication that maybe used to move people is now producing less movement. And, the team is showing up, but something just feels off, feels different. The energy just is not quite there like it used to be. Or maybe the commitment just seems kind of partial, or lesser than. And you're not really sure why. So what do? Your first instinct, right? If you're like me, most pastors, is to assume it's a communication problem or a clarity problem, maybe a cultural issue that needs to be addressed in your next all staff meeting. And so you work harder on those things, on communication, make the vision more clear. You relaunch with better language, and it still doesn't really produce the momentum that you need. So here's the question. What if the real issue isn't what or what you are communicating now? What if the issue is what you've communicated over the last 12 months, last 18 months? Specifically, right? The things you said you were committed to and then quietly or even maybe publicly pivoted away from. Now, this is why it's uncomfortable. Go back 12 months, 18 months, 24 months, right? How many things have you publicly or even semi-publicly announced that we're going to do, we're going to focus on? This is our new, vision. This is, maybe you changed your mission. I mean, whatever it may be. How many of those things has your church experienced over the last 12, 18, 24 months? And think about it. Not a lot of people left. Certainly not a ton of people revolted. Maybe nobody did, publicly at least. The feedback didn't arrive in any form that you can actually recognize. But what came to you instead was kind of a slow, quiet drift. Like questions that used to be answered by trust now require evidence. Like enthusiasm that used to be immediate now just feels like it takes longer to generate. So you changed direction and everybody took note, and then you changed direction again, and then they took more notes. Really what's happening is math. Math is what's happening to you. It's like a wrong calculation in a way. When a new initiative feels necessary, right? Most pastors run a reasonable set of questions. Is this the right move? Is the timing right? Do we have the resources? And you know what? Those are not bad questions. But alone, it's an incomplete analysis. The question that most leaders never ask is this: what does this pivot cost in trust? And this is the gap that most leadership thinking I guess we never think about when we're considering a change. When something needs to be, fixed, changed, pivoted, whatever it may be, that word took on pivot, right? Took on a lot of energy in 2020, 2021. So think about it. Every every change carries a price, whether it's small changes, medium, large changes, it carries a cost, a price. And again, as we said, this isn't a budget, although there may be a budgetary cost to it, but it's a credibility cost. Every relaunch, every revised vision moment, every, we're going in a direction, every conversation like that withdraws from an account that most leaders don't even know that they are holding and certainly haven't invested, deposited into enough. So your people, right? Your people have this running total in their head, and they don't know that they are even keeping it, but they are. So here's what most, I think, leaders and pastors just don't fully understand about their own influence. Credibility isn't built by being right. Credibility and trust is built by being consistent. Your team doesn't need you to have all the perfect ideas. What they need is to believe that when you say something, you mean it, and when you start something, you finish it. That's why this is uncomfortable. If I could be kind of maybe your kind of leadership coach for 10 minutes here, if you are saying things that you don't actually mean, and I don't mean you don't mean it when you say it, because we all mean it when we say it, but do you really mean it? Are you as certain as you're pretending you are? And are you starting things that never really get finished? We lose energy around it and we move on to something else. If that's you, right? Every time you change course, even when the new course is better, this is important, you make a withdrawal. And that new direction, listen, it may be right, but the pivot still cost you something. That's the trust tax. And most leaders are running a deficit that they cannot see. So here's kind of what's happening at the team level that most leaders don't see clearly. Your team is not evaluating your decisions in isolation. As we said, there's a cumulative effect here. It's math. They're evaluating your patterns of decision making. So when you pivot once, they adjust. When you pivot twice, they may start to hedge a little bit. By the third relaunch, they have learned something about you that you probably don't know about you. They've learned to just wait. They've learned to wait you out. And it isn't because they're disengaged. Just experience has taught them that full commitment now might be a wasted investment of their time and their energy. So here's what they do. They show up, they participate, they nod their head, they give you enough to kind of keep things functional, but they hold something back. And something, you need from them, but you can't demand from them. And it's buy-in. You can't demand buy-in, but boy, oh boy, as a leader, you need it. So you lose buy-in before you even know it's gone. And there is no moment, no conversation, no clear line where all this stuff shifted. You just started noticing that initiatives are slower to gain traction, or the same communication that used to move people is producing less movement. And you know what? That's not a communication problem. It's a trust problem. Like, the key thing I want you to carry out of this kind of discussion is this. They're not following your plan. They're following your pattern. And if the pattern communicates inconsistency, the plan, it doesn't even matter, because they know a new plan's probably on the way. They've already made a judgment about whether to commit to the plan because they know the pattern. Now, we need to be really clear about this in this conversation. Change is not the enemy, okay? Change isn't the problem. I don't want you walking away thinking, okay, cool, if Gavin's right, I guess we never change anything. That is not what we do. Some pivots are necessary. Some directions need to be corrected. Some things you started should be stopped. That's absolutely certain. And there are times when holding a course that isn't working is going to cost you more than just the trust tax. But the problem is not changing course. The problem is not calculating what the change is going to cost you. And again, as we said, most pastors evaluate, or leaders evaluate, whether the new direction is better. Too few of us ask, is this change worth what it's going to cost in trust? And do we have enough in the account to make this withdrawal? Now, that one question really does change everything about how you lead transformation or change. Like, it changes what you communicate. It changes how long you kind of hold the line before adjusting. I mean, it changes whether you need to rebuild trust before you relaunch anything. And listen, here's the thing. If you've made several directional changes in a short window, you may not have enough trust in the account to fund another one. And if you make the withdrawal anyway, you're going to go even deeper into deficit, like a bank account. And at some point, the account is going to be so empty. And once it's empty, no amount of clear vision or compelling communication is going to generate the commitment and the trust that you need. So what do you do about this? Well, let me just give you, again, some practical tools to kind of think about. I'm going to just put, I'm going to put something in your hand before we close. And so before your next pivot, before the next revised initiative or relaunch program or, redirected strategy, whatever, I would love for you to just run a trust audit. And this is not super complicated, but just three very quick questions. Okay. One, how many directional changes have I made in the last 18 months? And please be really honest about this number, okay? Rebrands, program relaunches, strategy shifts, vision revisions, all of it counts. All of it counts. Okay, number two, second question, what have I started and not finished? Because unfinished things do leave a mark, right? Even though they're gone from your calendar, they still left a mark. And your team doesn't just note what you changed, they also note what you walked away from. Third question, are the people God has entrusted to me, right? So are my people, call it what you want, fully committed to the current direction? Or are they hedging a little bit? And if you're not sure, that's your answer. When then if I'm going to give you a fourth question. This is the hardest one of all though. Do I have enough trust in the account to make this withdrawal? When you were thinking, ask those first three first, but as you're thinking about something that you really desperately feel like we have to do this has to change. Do you have enough trust in the account to actually make this withdrawal? And if you're not sure, you probably don't. And here's kind of the practical move, I think, that comes out of this audit. You hold the current direction longer than you may feel comfortable at times. You stay the course on something. And you know what? Sometimes staying the course is the best decision because so often people who are more change-oriented shift before they even really have enough data to know the shift is necessary, right? You can't do something for a month and go, well, it's not working. You got to give it some more time. So this is actually how you can rebuild what constant pivoting has cost you. So it's not a dramatic move. It's just by being a lot more consistent. And I love this. It doesn't require a new initiative. In fact, it requires no new initiatives. It requires staying committed to what you have already said that you are going to do for long enough to actually know if it's working and long enough to build trust so that if you do have to change it, you have at least enough in the account to make the withdrawal. Now, last part of this, leadership, I think we all know this. Leadership runs on trust, not on authority, not on the title, not on the effort. Like when your people that follow you, when they stop believing your words are going to hold, they will start treating your direction really as provisional instead of certain. And your influence is going to shrink because of that. And you can still produce some activity and you can fill up a calendar, but you're going to lose the ability to generate momentum because momentum requires commitment and commitment requires trust. And you know what? You're not going to know like when you've crossed the line. That's just the nature of the trust tax. And by the time it becomes visible, you've actually been paying the tax for a very, very long time. So before I let you go, let me just give you a question to sit with, okay? What are you going to stay the course on? Not because it's all working perfectly, not because the current direction is, perfect, but because the people in your church, on your team, on your staff, your volunteers, they need to see that you mean what you say. So if you're wrestling with any of this, direction, I get it. If you feel like you need to pivot, but you're not sure what it's going to cost you, I'd be more than happy to think through that with you. You can just shoot me an email directly, gavin@gavinadams.com. As most of you know, I read all of those emails that come to me and I respond directly, I do, to all of them too. So I'd love to hear from you. And until next time, we'll talk soon.